Alright guys, welcome back to our session on ActiveX Control. ActiveX Control functions similar to the normal form control in Excel for those of you who may be aware of it. However, there are two main advantages as to why we should consider using ActiveX Control. Number one, ActiveX Control offers more flexibility in terms of changing its design and appearance. For example, you could have better level of customization with the font color, button color, and etc., which can be accessed through the Properties tab, which I will be showing you, right? So I have a screenshot of it. Okay, it's not clear, but never mind. We will be going through a lot of examples, okay, in this session. Secondly, ActiveX Control allows us to interact with VBA object library, okay? For example, if you want to populate a worksheet and perform computations related to VBA object model, that is achievable with ActiveX Controls, unlike with the normal form controls in Excel, where you're restricted to the cell value, right? Basically, within the context of the worksheet, okay? But with the ActiveX Controls, you have access to the VBA object model, right? So you can call upon them and you can perform statement codes. All right. So to access the Properties tab of the ActiveX Control, click on the Design Properties, okay? So we'll get into that in a while, right? So one thing you have to understand is that ActiveX Controls are used as objects in the code, right? So if the object resides in the sheet, we can simply use the keyword me, okay? We can simply use the keyword me to get intelligence on the list of ActiveX Controls in the sheet, okay? So this is something that I will explain to you, but basically if I'm on sheet 1 and I have all these ActiveX Controls placed on sheet 1, what it basically means is I can go to sheet 1 on my Visual Basic application and I can actually call upon the object, the ActiveX Control object that resides on that particular sheet, okay? So if it's not clear, never mind. We will be going through some examples and it will be crystal clear by the end of it, okay? So without further ado, let's get started, okay? Let's get started. So I have a fresh sheet in front of me here, and we're going to do some basic ActiveX Control, okay? So we're going to explore the properties of the ActiveX Control. So let's start with the checkbox, okay? So I'm just going to have a checkbox placed right here, okay? So now I have a checkbox on the worksheet. So if I click on the checkbox, okay, the first thing I'll do is I have to make sure that whenever I'm accessing the Properties tab, I have to click Design Mode, okay? If I'm going to access the Properties tab of any of the ActiveX Control, hit on this Design Mode and then go to your checkbox or whatever control that you're interested in. And then we're going to go to Properties to inspect the associated properties associated to the ActiveX Control, right? To the selected ActiveX Control, all right? So we're going to do some simple thing here, right? Some simple basic stuff. Basically, we're going to change the name of the checkbox to just checkbox, right? Instead of checkbox 1 to checkbox 1. So I've done that. I've changed the name of the checkbox into checkbox 1. All right, or maybe we'll have, right? So you might be asking, why am I not seeing the changes reflected on real time? Well, no. The reason is being this is the name that you use to reference this object in the code CHCK box, and the caption is what you're seeing on the sheet, right? So now if I change this, I would see that the values are changed accordingly, okay? So checkbox, basically if you check on it, something happens, and etc. Okay, so let's do some very simple operations associated to the checkbox. We're going to do something that relates to the VBA object model. And what I'm going to do, okay, so where does the checkbox sit? The checkbox sits on sheet 1, right? So if I go to sheet 1, now I'll be able to see the checkbox, right? I'll be able to see the checkbox and the associated properties, the events related to the checkbox. So we're just going to have this simple click event, right? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to say if me, so I'm going to use the word key me. Why am I able to use the word, why am I using the word keyword me? To get intelligence on the list of ActiveX Control that sits on sheet 1. So these will be automatically registered. So what was the name of the checkbox? You see, it's giving us intelligence on the name of the ActiveX Control that resides on sheet 1. So that's why I'm able to use the keyword me, okay? And then I'm going to say if me checkbox.value equals to true, Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to do something with the application.display full screen. Okay, so I want our Excel workbook to return a full screen mode if this checkbox is ticked. Otherwise, if me dot checkbox, okay, see I have the name of the checkbox, so it's so convenient to use ActiveX control, okay, equals to false, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn off the application.display full screen and return it back to the way it originally was. I mean, the way the Excel worksheet or workbook was originally in, right? The default standard layout. Okay, so display full screen. I don't know why am I having two screens over here. Screen should be screen, right? So I've added the if statement. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to close this and we're going to test the code. So if you're going to test the code, get out of the design mode. Make sure you get out of the design mode and then we're going to test the code. Right, log if without end if. Right, instead of n, I should be putting n if. Okay, so now if I close the workbook and I disable it, look at that, right? We have the full screen mode enabled simply by the check of this checkbox, right? So we have introduced interaction with the object library by coding onto the checkbox ActiveX control. Okay, so that's the very basic things that you can do with ActiveX control, but the possibilities are virtually endless. Okay, and so we're going to try the second type of ActiveX control. Let's go into option button, right? So if you remember the option button, it also exists in the form control, right? But we're going to use the option button in the ActiveX, right? So we're going to do a couple things with it, right? You'll see what we can do with it. Okay. Okay, so I've told you that very early on that the form controls and the ActiveX controls, right, they're more or less the same. So in a form control, if you want to group the option buttons, you would have actually a group box, right? You have a group box. Basically, if you enclose these group box around the option buttons, the list of option buttons that are on the worksheet, it treats them as a group. But if I go down to the ActiveX control, I am not seeing that group box. So why am I not seeing group box? Now, if I have as many option buttons as I want down on this as many ActiveX control option buttons on the worksheet, Excel is going to treat all of them as one group, and we don't want that. Suppose, okay, so let's get out of the design mode and test it out. So suppose option button 3, and I can only activate one at a time. You see that? I can only activate one at a time because the reason is they're all being treated as one group. So now, what if I want to treat option button 1 and option button 2 as one group, and option button 3 and option button 4 as the second group? Okay, so this is what we have to do, right? We have to go to the properties. Okay, so I'm now on design mode, so I'm going to go to option button 1, and I'm going to name the group on the properties panel. Okay, remember that. Okay, so where am I going to change the name is I'm going to go to the group name right here. Okay, I'm going to go to the group name. All right. So in case you're wondering, where did I get the value, checkbox of value? So I've actually just called the value from here, right? You have the value false and true from the checkbox. Okay, and then you also have the enabled, right? So the enabled is basically if I turn off enabled, I'm not able to do anything in the checkbox. It's disabled basically, right? So it's something I don't know if you might need to use in the future. So I'm just going to activate the design mode again to go to the properties tab, and then I'm going to turn on back the enabled. So the value is the true or false was just basically the tick mark, right? So if it's false, it's unchecked, and if it's true, the tick is enabled. Okay, so that's pretty much what I should have touched on checkbox in case you were a little bit confused there, right? So option button 1, we're going to go back to the option button. So I have the design mode turned on. If you want to access the properties tab, make sure the design mode the design mode is turned on. Okay, so you click, you can turn on and off. Okay, so whenever you want to run the controls, you turn off the design mode. But if you are doing anything, if you want to access the properties panel and do anything with it, you have to make sure the design mode is turned on. So I'm going to go to group name, option button 1. I'm just going to say this is group 1. Likewise, I want option button 1 and option button 2 to be on one group. So it's 1 as well, right? And then you can name it whatever you want, right? But as long as they have the same name. So I'm just going to name this group name as 2. Okay. And then I'm going to name this group name, option button 4, as 2. So I have 2 option buttons with the group name 1 and 2 option buttons with the group name 2. So now Excel is going to treat this one and this one as one group. And if I get out of the design mode, you see, I could only select option button 1 and option button 2 at once. And then I can go option button 3. You see, option button 2 is not disabled now, right? It's not turned off. I can have 2 selections because this is one group. This is the second group, basically. Second group, first group. So I go to option button 4. 3 is turned off, okay? Because 3 and 4, they're one group, okay? So make sure that you understand that on the option buttons, okay? So now, let's do something with the option buttons. All right, I am just trying to see what we can do. Okay, all right, let's perform some simple. Let's call a simple macro from the option button. Okay, so I'm going to have 2 sets of macro, right? But it's because the idea here is I just want to show you that you can even interact with procedures, right? Procedures inside a module, right? Inside the VBA. Okay, from the ActiveX control. That's the advantage of using ActiveX control. Okay, is that you have access to the VBA's vast collection of object library. So I'm just going to say farewell. So I have two basically procedures here, which I'm going to call separately. Okay, then I'm just going to say bye, right? So one is the farewell and the other one is one is greetings for hello and the other one is farewell for bye. Okay, so I'm going to go back to sheet 1. Go back to sheet 1, and if I go and activate this drop down list, I'm going to be able to see the 4 option buttons have been registered, right? So by default, whenever you have an ActiveX control, it goes into the system. Okay, VBA smart enough to pick up the fact that okay, well, I have this number of ActiveX control. So I'm going to go to ActiveX control option button 1. And then we're just going to use the click event, right? Okay, so we have a list of available events associated to the option button, right? But generally, we just go with the click, right? We don't have to go too far, right? We just go with what 95% of VBA developers use often, right? Because we're not doing something too crazy with VBA, right? We're not going to make it dance or whatever is it. The idea of programming language is to solve problems. Okay, so in this case, if me.option button value equals to true, right, sorry guys, there is something going on. All right. Okay, so if our me.option button 1.value equals to true, then call greeting. Okay, so basically, if the first option button is enabled, I'm going to call greeting, and then I'm just going to end the if. All right, and then we can also have another one for option button 2. Right, option button 2. Also, I'm going to use a click event, and now I'm going to say if me.option button 2. See, I'm having IntelliSense just by using the keyword me. Because why am I able to use the keyword me? Because the object resides in the ActiveX control resides in the worksheet, right? So I'm able to invoke the objects in sheet 1, the object that resides in the sheet 1 with the keyword me, right? Me meaning that I'm in sheet 1, right? And the list of controls available on that particular sheet. Okay, so this is basically what it means. So option button 2 equals to true, then call farewell and end if. Okay, so that's about it. Let's test the code now. Let's test the code, right? So option button 1, I'm getting hello. Option button 2, bye, right? So you see, we are able to interact with VBA procedures, right? So that's the advantage of ActiveX control. So what I could also use this ActiveX control to control the properties of other ActiveX controls, right? For example, right, checkbox, okay. For example, if I wanted to do something with, okay, for example, if I wanted to change the back color of the checkbox, okay, so I could say when the option button 1 is enabled, I can change the, is it the fore color or back color, right? We're going to change the back color, okay, we're going to change the back color. So when option button 1 is enabled, I can change the back color to something, and when the option button 2 is enabled, I can change the back color to something else. Okay, so let's just try that. Okay, so I'll say that if it's option button 1, let's look for a back color that has a very catchy appearance. So I'm just going to go to the palette, and okay, so I have the color here, right? Okay, we'll just use this color, right? Some very random color, and then I'm going to turn off the properties tab, and then I'm going to go to properties. And then what I'm going to do is we're going to go to the Visual Basic application, right? And then what I'm going to say is me dot checkbox dot back color, right? The back color, we're changing the back color. What was the color code? We're copying it right here, okay? And then if it's false, okay, if this one is enabled, because if this one is enabled, it's going to give this color. If this one is enabled, we want to change color, right? We want to change the color again, right? So we can change the color to the, let's use the default color here, right? So I'm just going to use the window background. Okay, we're going to use the window background, and what's the color for the window background? It's this color right here. Okay, so I'm just going to copy this. Okay, I'm going to copy this, then I'm going to go to the Visual Basic application, and then I'm going to say me dot checkbox dot back color equals to just copy this thing, whatever the code was, right? So now you could see that ActiveX control, one ActiveX control is controlling the other ActiveX control, right? So let's test it out and see if it works. Hello, we're getting hello, and you see it's turning red. Now if I go option button 2, I'm getting bye, and you see the color is returning back to the color that basically the Windows color, right? So that is the versatility of ActiveX control. Okay, as you could have seen it already, right? It's very easy to call upon it, and you could do just a lot of things, right? So the next we're going to do is we're going to go to the I'm going to cover the basics first. Okay, we're not going to go into command. Okay, command button is basically just the click button, right? So if you have the command button, you click it, right? Basically, what I do with the command button is I generally assign macros to command button, correct? So what I do is I go to the properties. I go to the code, and then with the command button, what I generally, this is just how I do, is when it's click, I just call the procedures. Okay, I just call the procedures. This is how I use the command button. So I'm not going to go too much into the command button, right? We'll see that if we can cover that in the future. But I think it's pretty self-explanatory. It's pretty much the same as how when we assign shape and then we assign a macro into it. It's the same thing with the command button, except you're going into the view code. You're going into the code editor, and then you're just writing call whatever the procedure that you're calling. Okay, so never mind. We'll just go into it, right? Since we already have a procedure, I'm just going to go and use the command button, right? So where's the command button? And then click. I'm just going to say call greeting. Okay, so it's a very simple thing. So as soon as I hit this command button, then I'll just define. I'm just going to click this. I'm seeing that the macro is being called. So if you want to change the name to something more fancy, once again, go to the properties tab. Not sheet one, if you have this enabled, and then go to properties, and the caption name will just be maybe my greeting, my greet. Okay, so I get out of design mode, my greet, and I'm getting hello. All right. Okay, so that's about it for the command button. So let's go to text box, right? Text box. Let's go to text box. Do we have a text box? Right? Yes, we have a text box. So the text box is a very simple thing, all right? Basically, I can populate values into the text box, right? The general idea of having text box in ActiveX Control is I can have some value here, 25, or 24, right? Or 5, whatever, okay? doesn't matter. And then I can go to properties, and what I can do is I can link the cell, right? I can link this ActiveX control to a cell. So the cell is J1, right? The cell is J1, okay? And that's about it. See, I'm seeing the value 5 populated onto the text box, right? So the idea of having text box is that you can link values to cell address, okay? So we've covered text box. Now let's go to combo box, right? We're going to go into more the more advanced ActiveX control, okay? So combo box, okay? I'm not going to go to spin button and basically the scroll bar. They function virtually the same as the ones in the form control, right? So if you're not familiar with that, then I suggest you go and do some read up on these two features, right? That they basically the scroll bar and the spin button, right? So nothing too complicated. We're gonna go into combo box and this box. I have to cover these two, okay? To cover these two, so we're gonna go to the combo box, okay? So the combo box basically is like a drop down list, okay? The combo box is basically a drop down list whereby if I have some values that I like to invoke upon by activating the drop down list, right? So I could use the combo box. So I'm going to just put in some values here, right? I'm just going to put in some values. I'm just going to say electronics, TV, phones, and then maybe just say watch, okay? So the first way I can populate the values into my combo box is I can use the list field range. Okay, so I have the list field range, and I know that the range that I'm referring to is J20 to J23, right? To J23. Okay, right? So now if I've already have the J20, J23. Now, if I get out of the design mode and activate the combo box, I'll be able to see the list of available entries, okay, that's referenced directly from this range. Now, what if I add another entry, okay? Maybe I'm going to say laptop. And as you could see, it's not being updated dynamically, right? It's not being updated dynamically. So, what if you want the combo box to be dynamic? Meaning that, you want it to be able to account for any additional entry, okay? So there is a way to do it, okay? First of all, if you want to populate a combo box dynamically, you never use the combo box event. Remember that. You never go to the combo box event and write your codes there to have a dynamic entry, okay? That's not the way to do it, okay? It never works, okay? What you have to do is you have to use some other events. Like you have to use the worksheet activate event, right? To populate the combo box, okay? You cannot use the event associated to the combo box to populate your combo box. Keep that in mind, right? Never use the events associated to the combo box to populate your combo box. You can use the worksheet event, whatever other events, okay? But not the combo box events, okay? Of the combo box you are trying to populate, all right? So now, worksheet activate event, what I'm going to do is I'm going to dim lrow as just long, okay? And then lrow is equals to range. Okay, I don't have to say the sheet name because we know we're in sheet 1 anyway. So what was the range? Range J20, right? J20, right? So range J and rows dot count, then n xl up dot row. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to populate the combo box, right? So what was the combo box name? Let's see if we have the name, right? Yes, we have the name, right? Combo box 1. I've not changed the name, so we'll just leave it as this way, never mind. And then I'm going to say dot list field range. Okay, dot list field range basically is the same field range, the properties that you get from here, right? So in case you're not sure, if I go to the combo box, I'm able to see the combo box name dot list field range. The combo box name is just the code name, combo box 1 dot me dot combo box 1 dot list field range. And you can have something dynamic. You're going to have a dynamic, you're going to populate it dynamically, basically, by using the worksheet activate event, right? We're not going to use the combo box event, okay? So you can refer to some websites, on some forums, as to why that's not possible. Okay, I'm not going to go into details and specifics, but you just can't do it, right? So we're going to go from J20 to the last row, right? So I'm going to say we're going to do it this way, right? J20 to J and L row. Okay. So this is triggered by the worksheet activate event. So how do we activate event? When we get out of an event, then we come back here, it's activated, right? So I'm going to get out of this, then I'm going to come back here, so the worksheet is activated, and I'll be able to see the list of entries in my combo box. Okay, so now this is dynamic. This is dynamic. The previous one was not dynamic. Now if I add another entry, I'm going to say pen drive or whatever, right? And then I'm going to go back to sheet 2. I'm going to reactivate sheet 1. And you can see pen drive, right? So I remove it, and then I go to sheet 2, I go to sheet, I go to sheet 1, and you see the values have been updated dynamically, all right? So that's how you establish a dynamic combo box. Now, I know you might say, well, it is a little bit difficult, right? Because I have to activate the worksheet and get out of it, come back. Well, that's the reason why we use user forms, right? User forms have events, the initialization user forms that can be used to populate your combo box, right? List box, whatever it is. So that's why the user form controls are a lot more convenient, because you could leverage on the user form events prior to it being initialized and loaded onto the Excel workbook or Excel interface. So there's no get around to it. What you could do is to make sure that the workbook is always activated is you can always have your data that need to be populated on a separate sheet. So it forces user to enter it on a separate sheet and then return back to sheet 1. And you, by in a way, you would force them to inadvertently force them to trigger the worksheet event, right? So that's the way to go about it, right? Yeah, if you really have to use the combo box, dynamic combo box on ActiveX Control. So finally, I want to touch on the list box. Okay, so there are two things that you need to know in the list box. Okay, the list box is just right here. Okay, so I have a list box. Okay, the first thing that you need to know about the list box is the same thing, is what's the field range. Okay, with the list box on ActiveX Control, I'm not aware that you can have some dynamic list box entry. Okay, I've tried it before. Okay, this didn't seem to work. Okay, so maybe you could try it yourself to see if the same thing works as you did in the combo box. But I've tried it and it didn't work. Okay, I tried it some time back. Okay, so the first thing is the list field range. So this thing has to be, I think, a fixed range. Okay, and the second thing, you have to be aware of the column counts, right? So what I mean by that is, for example, I can just have fruits and location. Okay, so I'm going to have fruits and location, and then I'm just going to put some values. Okay, I'm just going to put some entirely random values. So I'm just going to think about a list of fruits. Okay, okay, I can think about apples, pears, okay, oranges, grapes, maybe pineapple, right? Okay, and then the location is, I'm just going to say New Zealand, United Kingdom, and then Australia, Sweden, Germany. Okay, so I have this list box, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my properties once again, and then I'm going to say, what's my field range? My field range starts from Z24 to AA28, right? That's my field range, Z24 to AA28, right? So I have to activate this thing, and then I'm going to Z24 to AA28, right? Z24 to AA28. Now, you have to be careful of the column counts, because we have two columns, right? So that's why you have to specify the column counts as 2, right? And I'm not going to worry too much about the column heads here, because we have not referenced the column heads anyway. Now we can see the column, the list box has been populated accordingly. Okay, so if I get out of the design mode, I'm able to make selection, and I can also link them back. I can link the value that has been inputted, right, into the cell, right? Link cell. I can just link whatever that I've selected into maybe L30. Okay, maybe just L30, some random cell. Okay, entirely random. Okay, so link cell is L30. Now, if I get out of the design mode, I go to grapes. You can see L30 has the value grapes into it. Okay, so that's one way to use the list box. All right. Okay, guys, I think we have covered enough on ActiveX Control. So there's obviously more to it than what you're seeing here. So I encourage you to go and try to explore ActiveX Control on your own, and try to see if you could, harness some of the more advanced features of ActiveX Control. Right? I have seen ActiveX Control that whereby you could add, have worksheet added, and then have it returned onto the combo box, and then you could delete the worksheet and then see the worksheet gets deleted as well. So yeah, this is a clever workaround using the worksheet events and etc. So you just have to be creative, and there's a lot of resources on the internet. So work diligently, and you will surely find the solution to the automation problem that you're looking for. All right. Okay, that's about it, guys. I'll see you in the next lecture where we'll go into user forms. Okay, another interesting topic.